consecutive integer word problems. Before we can actually talk about the word problems, we need to talk about a couple of definitions here. So, it will be helpful if we know what the word consecutive means, and it will also be helpful if we know what the word integer means. So, let's start with consecutive. Can anybody tell us what consecutive means? Run together, okay. Brianna, what do you think? Good. One thing happens after the other. Good. So consecutive is like if you think about someone being consecutive national championships, it means they were year after year, right? Like back to back. Okay? So consecutive is continuous. Let's see what we said. Back to back. One after another. Okay? So consecutive is like back to back. It happened once and then it happened another time, right away. All right? Who remembers what an integer is? Good. Positive, negative number, can we be a little bit more specific? There's one more piece of information there we like to have with integers. Positive and negative numbers. Rihanna? Close. It's the other ones. That's rational, so that's the group, like one more group. Good. Whole numbers. Okay, so when we're talking integers, it's positive and negative whole numbers. Good. Not fractions, not decimals. All right, so examples of consecutive integers would be like 1, 2, 3, so on. -3, -2, 1, 0, and so on. All right, so then if we want to talk about consecutive even integers, that would be like 2, 4, 6, or -8, -6, -4, right? Continuing in both directions for all of these, really. That's what the ... dots in both directions mean. It means it continues in both directions. So then last we have consecutive odd integers, right? Which could be like -5, -3, -1, 1, and so on. Any questions on just what a consecutive integer set is, what it might look like? Okay, so let's take this a little bit into context now. And let's say the sum of two consecutive integers is 25. What are the integers? All right, some of you might be able to look at this and like just know it, right? But like this is a fairly simple one because the sum is 25. If our sum gets really, really big, it's harder to just look at it and know the answer. So the way we do this is we're talking about two numbers here, right? Because it says the sum of two consecutive integers is 25. First of all, what does sum mean? Good. Sum is addition, right? The answer, solution to an addition problem, right? So we're adding two numbers here. We don't know either of the numbers. You might, in your head, you might already know, but we assume we don't know either of them, right? They didn't give us either of the numbers. So when we're talking about an unknown, we can call it with a variable. So n will be the first number. If we're adding consecutively, how could we figure out what comes after n without introducing a new variable? Let's look up here at our list. What did I do to 1 to get to 2? Good. I added 1. What did I do to 2 to get to 3? I add 1. Same thing here. -3 to -2. Good. I added 1. -2 to 1. I added 1, right? So when we're talking about consecutive integers, if you're talking about two numbers back to back, your first one is n, and to get the number that comes after n, we just add 1. So that's our second number. Delmer, I don't think we added 3 anywhere. I don't think I know what you mean. Oh, that's just because I wrote this out of order. Thank you, Delmer. All right, so we have our first number and we have our second number. And we know that the sum of these is 25. So we can say n, which is the first number, plus n plus 1, which is the second number, equals 25. Okay, so this gives us n plus n is 2n plus 1 equals 25. So in order to solve this, I subtract 1, and I'm left with 2n equals 24. Divide by 2, and n equals 12. But we want to know both numbers, so the first number, n equals 12, n plus 1 is 13. Questions on that first example? Okay, the next case we're going to look at, I think you guys are still copying, let me give you a second. Okay. Now we're going to look at consecutive even / odd integers. All right. You solve these problems the exact same way, whether it's even or odd. Okay. It doesn't matter if it's even or odd. You're going to solve them the same way. All right, the sum of 3 consecutive odd integers is negative 57. What is the largest integer? All right, so in this case, we have 3 integers. So we're going to have first, second, and third. Our first integer, okay, is always the same thing. Whether we're talking consecutive or we're talking even odd consecutive, you always just start with an unknown. So we have n. If you want to use x, you can. If you want to use m, if you want to use d, whatever letter makes you happy. Okay? Now, in this case, we're talking odd. So if we look back at our odd and even consecutive numbers, are we adding 1 to get to the next number here? How many are we adding? 2, right? For even and odd, right? Because right here to get from 2 to 4, I add 2. From 4 to 6, I add 2. From -5 to -3, I add 2. -3 to -1, I add 2. So in this case, I'm going to add 2. All right, and then for the next one, I need to add 2 more. So n plus 2 plus 2, which is also just n plus 4. All right, again, we're talking about the sum. That means add. So we need to add all of these up, and they're going to equal -57. So I have n plus n plus 2 plus n plus 4 is equal to -57. And I'm just putting these little brackets like that so you can differentiate that this is our first number, second number, and third number, that they're all accounted for there. All right, so then we combine like terms, and I have 1, 2, 3n, and 2 plus 4 plus 6 equals -57. Okay, now we subtract 6 from both sides. And I'm left with 3n equals -62. Divide by 3, and n equals -21. In this case, they asked specifically for the largest number, okay? So let's find out our other integers. We have -21 plus 2. Remember, we're talking about negatives, so that becomes -19. And then -21 plus 4 gives me -17. So out of -21, -19, and -17, which one is the largest? Think about your number line. Good, Delmer. -17 is the largest. Yep, so that's the trick with the negatives. We can't forget that it's really easy for us to say -21 is the largest. But you can also just remember that when you're doing these problems, n is always going to be the smallest. And then the other ones are going to be bigger. Okay. Let's look at two more examples. Let's see. All right, so let's do an age example. An age example. All right. Bob is 3 years older than Steve. Kyle is 2 years younger than Steve. the sum of their ages is 106. How old are they? Okay, so let's break this down. And remember, we can only have an equation with one variable. And if you look, everybody's age is based off of Steve's. Okay, so we're going to write everything based off Steve. So we have Bob. And we know that Bob is 3 years older than Steve. So we can say Steve plus 3. Then we have Kyle. And it says Kyle is 2 years younger than Steve. So that means Steve, take away 2. And then obviously our last person is just Steve. And Steve is just Steve, so just S, right? Again, we're talking sum, so we're going to add them up, and their sum is 106. So Bob is S plus 3, plus Kyle is S minus 2, plus Steve, just S, is equal to 106. Then we're going to combine like terms to solve. So S plus S plus S is 3S. 3 plus a negative 2 is 1, a positive 1, equals 106. So we subtract 1. And we have 3S equals 105. And then we divide by 3. And we're going to get S equals 35. That means Steve is 35. Kyle is Steve minus 2, so 35 minus 2 is 33. And Bob is Steve plus 3 is 38. Yes, Delmer, there are other ways to do this, but this is the most direct way. Yes, I can move it up. Alex, you need to turn your camera on. I'm not going to repeatedly ask you. All right. We're going to do one more example before I'm going to let you guys go practice. Oops. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Okay. So right here, I had 1, 2, 3s, right? And then I had a positive 3 minus 2, which gives me 1. Does that help? Cool. Good question. All right. This is an ugly one. It's a challenge. You can't see it. I lost my thing. There we go. Where did it go? Sorry, guys, I lost my problem. Oh, there we go. All right, if we look at this one, in this case, we're not talking about consecutive integers. It doesn't say consecutive, so we don't assume that they're consecutive, right? It says the sum of two numbers is 57. If the larger of the two numbers is 9 less than twice the smaller, find the two numbers, okay? So we have two numbers, a large and a small. Let's call our first number, the smaller number, a variable. Okay, so you always start with the smaller number. Our smaller numbers are variables, so in this case, you can use whatever you want. I'm going to use n. The larger is 9 less than twice the smaller. Okay, so we have to use the smaller to say larger. 9 less means minus 9. And twice the smaller means 2n. So we just have to kind of remember, I know you guys have seen things like this before, but I know they're tricky, so you just have to think about what it means. All right, and then the sum is 57, so we just add these up. So n plus 2n is 3n, minus 9 equals 57. Add 9 to both sides. We're left with 3n equals 66. Divide by 3, and n equals 22. All right, and so then we need to find the next one. So we're going to use that 22 and say 2 times 22 minus 9. So that's 44 minus 9 gives us 35. Yeah, sorry, Simone, that was the last piece of notes, so I'll leave those there. And I'm also always put the notes on Canvas so you can access them again later. If you have all the notes, you are free to move on in the agenda. There's a link to your next assignment. It is pencil paper work, and then you're going to submit pictures of your work into Canvas. So there's a Google Doc with the questions. You're going to, you don't have to write the questions, just the number is fine. And you're going to write them in your work, and then you'll just take pics of that and submit those for your assignment. And if you would like to work with a partner, you can put their name in the chat box to me, and I can send you guys to a breakout room. We just lost someone. I can't remember. Does anybody else want a breakout room? And we got 2 groups. All right, there's a couple of you who requested partners, so I'm going to send you guys to those breakout rooms. Before I send you those, does everybody know how, that's okay, Skylar. Does everybody know how to access the assignment? Yeah, everybody found it? Okay. If you change your mind and you decide you have a partner you want to work with, just let me know. I can put you in a room.